Emotional connections are more important to consumers than functional efficiency. And I'm going to ask Tony Spong, who's from AAI, who's going to be the moderator, to bring his troops up. Whilst they're getting themselves sorted out, my point of view on this, and by the way, I have been told there is food outside, but please don't go now. My point of view, I think, on this is that the two things are not mutually exclusive. If you ask my missus which is her favourite brand, she may mention Ocado, she may mention Amazon Prime. She loves those brands because they are so functionally efficient. They deliver the thing that she can't get as a mum with two kids, and that's time. So that is not a helpful way to start that panel, but I thought I'd make the point. Tony.
Thank you. I think I've got, is this one working? So I like walking about. We've got an esteemed panel. I'll introduce them very quickly. This is Chris, he's already a CEO, so they breed him younger and younger. He's working out of Belfast, yeah? And he works for a company called Adoreboard, which I heard about 3 weeks ago, and I thought was astonishing. And we'll come on to that a little bit shortly. We've then got Ben, who's creative, and he's got a huge problem dealing with a lot of the stuff that Adam talked about. Because how do we put a lot of that into actual practical work? And we've got two lovely clients who have got to give people like Ben a brief to come up with wonderful stuff like we've just been talking about. So, as Adam's alluded to, there's a heck of a lot of change. So we've got Liz, who's from easyJet, at one end of the spectrum, where they are turning what was a very functional brand, thank God, because it works very well, into something more emotional now. And at the other end of the spectrum, we've got Lisa from Jamie Oliver Media Group, who's probably got more content than any of us could shake a stick at. And she's got a completely different set of problems of trying to manage all of that volume of content and get that out to us as consumers. So it's a really interesting blend on the panel today. So thanks to the Havas Helia guys for organising all of that, and hopefully makes my job a bit easier. So I just want to open up with this emotional thing. I think it is quite fascinating how we are obsessed with trying to understand ourselves as humans in a space where we aren't human. There is no body language online, and that is one of the things that we learn from the age of 12 months to 18 months. We can tell when someone's lying. And by the time we're 4, we can actually work out who's lying and why. Now, we can only do that through tone of voice, eye contact, and body language, which is why I think fear is a very good description about where we are. But because we are human, we are very, very curious about everything and anything around us, which is why it is so exciting to hear people like Adam, and many of you here are doing fantastic projects around how do we understand human behaviour at our least human. So we are studying how we are behaving non-verbally, if you like, in a very verbal domain. We're interacting in a very strange way with each other. We have to use these emoticon things because there is no emotion. So was I crying when I wrote that? Was I laughing when I said that? Was I being cheeky? Was I in love with you when I said it? I have to put all these things at the end of my text message, my email, or whatever, because I can't do it any other way, because you can't hear what I actually say and what I really, really mean. And yes, I do love you, Tash. Yeah, it's easy from here, but it's very difficult when I text her because she doesn't believe me when I text her. Yeah. So it's absolutely fascinating how this has opened up this great pool of energy in a way to discover what we are like as humans in this non-human world. So I'm going to start with Chris because he's found a little schemect which is about trying to measure emotion in what we say when we write it down. And he's just done, I don't know if you're allowed to expand on it, but they've run the political parties' manifestos through the machine. So if he's allowed to tell us, he will, hopefully. But would you like to introduce what you do and perhaps a nice example?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Chris Johnston. I'm founder of a company called Adoreboard. We measure how the world feels about brands online. we have developed a very simple metric called the Adore score. It works a bit like a stock price for brands, where we can infer whether people are adoring or flooring content and brands online. And we've developed a new way to pre-analyze content. And I think probably the kind of picking up from what we're discussing there, I think the challenge for the people in the room here is around how you think about your audience. And I think for a long time, we have certainly imposed our views on what people like and what people are interested in, what people will find novel. And I think data analytics is really allowing us to explore that from the customer. So we've done some hilarious studies where we've shown brands where they're totally misaligned from what their customers think. And we looked at a luxury brand that sells e-cigarettes, and they kind of promoted themselves as, the luxury delivery of this amazing experience in e-cigarettes. And when we did the analysis and we looked at the concepts that were people putting out, they were actually using it to smoke marijuana. And so the challenge for brands is this total misalignment with customers, and that's probably where we see a significant value in understanding that.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Thank you. Liz, I'm going to come to you on easyJet, if I may, because everyone knows the case, or pretty much knows the case study about how the business has really turbocharged. I mean, it was pretty good anyway, but it reached a plateau, and the marketing team now have done an amazing job at adding an emotional layer. You work in the CRM space where the data is. What's that journey been like for you to try and take what the brand guys, if you like, have been doing into that space? Has it even been possible to attach this emotion?
I think we're getting there, but I think going back to the sort of the original premise of the conversation, this has all been born from getting operational excellence, getting the day-to-day, the functional efficiency working really, really well. I was very lucky. I joined easyJet when Carolyn McCall had been there already for a year or two and had really turned the business round to get us working effectively. And that, for me, is what's really resonated with customers and allowed us to build on that, to start that conversation, to build on the sort of the brand metrics, to have the CRM.
So you think there was absolutely no permission to get emotional until that was,
agreed,
especially in your space?
Definitely. We're a bus in the sky. We are to get people from A to B. There is no emotional connection unless we make it work effectively for them.
Thank you. Lisa. That's right. We spoke just before we sat down about your almost unique problem. I mean, most clients and agencies I work with are grappling what the hell to do with content, how to create it, where to stick it, how it will be useful. Mr. Oliver, who we all adore and has got more men cooking, I suspect, than anything else. I was very fortunate. I used to work above the River Cafe many years ago, so I didn't know it was him at the time, but he was one of the footballers who used to come out at 3:30 in the afternoon, and all the chefs, young chefs, used to kick a footballer, and he was one of those guys. I mean, the journey for him has been astonishing. How do you almost keep control of it? I mean, he seems to be able to produce content at ease.
Yes, I mean, he does. As you rightly identified earlier, it's a very emotional kind of subject, food. But it's about how do you continue to kind of pump out that content, make it relevant, make it engaging, and keep that conversation going, and not just with the same audience, because it's about that audience that originally started with Jamie has grown up with him. I mean, he's 40 next month, believe it or not. I mean, he's been in the game for sort of 15 years. But for us, it's about, he's built the last 15 years around this emotional product or content. It's about, and that was actually built on human intuition rather than data. But now it's about using data to inform what does the next 10 years look like, which is really interesting. So what sort of
data are you pulling in?
God, I mean, literally everything at our disposal. So who's consuming that content? Where are they consuming that content? So, for example, we've got so many different touch points in the media group. We've got a massive website, we've got an app, we've got a FoodTube channel, and people consume that content in such a different way. And, you know, we know on the website it's mainly women, and they're looking for a recipe and they're gone, they're out again. On FoodTube, it's mainly blokes who are looking for sneaky ways of how they can cook something really quickly. And, you know, for them, it's about how do I get in really quickly, watch something for 5 minutes, how do I cook a steak, and be gone again. But actually, they do that, but women will go in and do that, and they'll share that with their friends. So it's what's really interesting.
The blokes won't share.
They won't share, no, they won't share. So they'll just go in and do it really, they'll do it really secretly. And then what's really interesting around TV programmes as well is that women are generally willing to give half an hour to a TV show. They'll come in, they'll watch it, they'll commit to it. That's not saying that guys don't watch it as well. But actually, what they prefer is being on FoodTube and being able to consume that content in private and then pretend that they actually know how to cook it all along.
Sneaky stuff, thank you. So I think that's back to the point that you can trust a human to do something very human and not as predicted. So Ben, I'd like to come to you last if I can. I think you've got a hell of a job. Pay rise, obviously. But what's it like from your perspective? You've got probably more data. Have the briefs changed, the way they're written, the way they're briefed to you? What have been some of the changes that this data revolution has caused?
I don't think the briefs have changed. No. I think the expected outputs have changed, possibly. You know, our job's always about the storytelling, and data allows you to tell better stories, basically. You know, personalisation is great because that's based on a true story, and that's the story of you. You know, that's always really impactful.
Do you trust the data that you get given? Is there a clash with some of your instincts, or?
No, I think we've had data from football fans, we've had data from, users of shower gel, data from Formula One cars, and, you have to tell the appropriate story off of the back of that, really. Often it's about turning a perceived negative to a positive. That's the basis of storytelling. Shark turns up on a beach on Labor Day, that's what happens with stories. So if you look at something like a Girl, that's quite interesting. That's the data of language and how, always took that as a perceived negative and made that into an incredibly shared positive, and now they're building from that. So that's the sort of stuff that we look for.
Who do you think's doing stuff well? Who's the sort of the guys out there that you see, you go,
I'm very jealous of that Beats case study, obviously. Yeah. Jealous of most of that stuff that you said, to be honest.
Is this the moment you swear? I don't know.
No, I'm sitting up here feeling like Westlife and, looking like, glad that I'm not sitting next to Adam, really.
All right, okay. Thank you. I'm conscious of time, so I thought it's about 10 minutes. Okay, great. Well, let's get some questions, because I think, following on from Adam's, let's just get going, and we'll work these guys pretty hard. If not, then I'll continue. But I think we'll have some questions about emotion, if we can. Anyone want to start? Or shall we continue? Any questions? All right, okay. Well, let's kick on. So for me, as I said at the top of the show, I think this balance between getting stuff absolutely right and the emotional layer, this human thing, is very important. Adam alluded to how we change tracks, which I think is not necessarily why we should change, but much more how. And certainly in my experience in recent years, working with clients and agencies, the things that resonate most of all is the how do we change, not the why. So I'm going to go back to Lis, if I may, and talk about if she can just expand on some of the journey that you've been on in terms of, have there been any complications? Has it been easy? Where have the demands been on internal resource? So have you got the right resource in place? Have you had to change that? I mean, I've met a client his biggest battle is with HR, because he can't hire the right people on the right package with the right tools to do the job he wants them to do. He wants to insource a huge amount of his digital capability rather than have it outside, because he said, I can't move fast enough. He said, I don't have a problem with lots of other people, but it's HR that I have the big battle with. So again, we're finding new problems that we've all got to solve, I think, which is interesting. So, Lis, have you got any big issues that you can share in your journey?
No, sorry to disappoint. So I mentioned I joined easyJet about 3 years ago, and I was very lucky that actually the vast majority of my team, who are all sat in row 2 staring at me right now, were already in place and are fantastic, and I couldn't have asked for a better team. Also, we had an existing relationship with Havas, which I inherited again, and we sort of reinvigorated. And I think what we have focused on very much is building on the great work that easyJet had put in place before I arrived, and really focused on creating that simple approach, steady approach to building a CRM capability. So understanding our data, creating a single customer view, understanding our customers, how they want to interact with us, and then finding a way to communicate with them and ultimately to try and get to the point of having a conversation with them. We're still on that journey. We're not nowhere near finished yet.
Any surprises?
Any surprises?
From the consumer insight?
No, because I look after all of our market research as well, and so we've got a really good counterbalance of being able to understand how far we can go. So I alluded to it earlier, but I genuinely believe there's only so far that we can go in that relationship with the customer, because we are a means to an end. We can't get too big for our boots. We can't believe that we can create their journey, their trip, their experience. That's not what we're about. We're getting them from A to B, and we need to do that easily, with a great service and at the right price. That's kind of what we're here to do. And our job is to understand our consumers, make that experience better for them, and to communicate with them effectively too.
Thank you. That's reality to some extent, is knowing your limits. Chris, have you found anything yet in terms of emotional connections with concepts and with brands that suggest where the boundary exists, i.e. that you're stretching it too far now in terms of building a relationship?
Yeah, I think a recent piece of work we did for one of the Magic Circle firms, these guys are billion-dollar companies. They spend, on average, 10 million people trying to recruit talent into the business. And they put out these narratives that, you don't have to go to, Oxford, Cambridge, wherever. You can come from a working class background and we're the best place to work, and you become a partner in the end. We looked at the concepts that surround the brand. We were kind of scratching our heads because this concept of PFO kept coming up 8,000 times, with the emotion linked, semantic emotion, to rage and frustration. And it turns out the PFO is please fuck off, or politely fuck off, depending on where you're coming from. And the challenge is that, again, it's this experience that you give the audience a narrative, but then when that experience breaks, they react to it. So yeah, going back to Liz's point around how you then use that to engender change, there's usually not an incentive for that to happen. So how do you use data to really mobilize and reinvigorate people to say, look, this could be a really fresh opportunity for us to go forward with the people that really matter.
So speed is, the more data we get, the more touch points we have, the faster we process the data. Lisa, if I may, you talked about how the men and women react differently to, especially the YouTube channel and some of the others. Are you feeling compelled and forced to use that to literally change, or is it much more gradual? Do you let it settle down? How do you interact with that piece of insight?
With that knowledge?
Yeah.
I think it's not necessarily we kind of divide up the way that we talk to kind of men and women. It's just that if we, for example, if we've got a core message that we want to go out and we know that we absolutely need, it's, we want all of our content to be shareable.
Yeah.
But if there are core messages, for example, around, Jamie's mission around his Food Revolution Day this year is to get people to sign a petition to lobby G20 leaders to put food education back on the map in every school on the planet. We know that women are probably more likely to share that than men, so actually we would probably steer that message more at women than we would necessarily at men. But actually, data we use, we use it in that way, but we also use it in a way to just inform around the content that people like. And, we're often massively surprised about the things that people get excited about. So, for example, the best performing video on food tube is how to cook eggs 3 ways. Who knew? And, the really, really simple stuff is you'll put it up and then you'll check it again in an hour and it's had like 100,000 views. And you're like, really? Okay. So we'll do more of that, but obviously, tweak it. So we're really lucky is that we are a brand and a media owner, so we can react to things. Yes. We can be really agile. That's just 2 examples of how we use it.
Oh, perfect. Ben, do you want to just take them? So what are the consequences in your world in terms of the clients and consumers are telling us that we'd like this now?
Yeah.
How fast can you react? Is that?
We have you can react instantly if you need to because all the data's right there and the Twitter streams there. Yeah. You can plan your reaction. We've done campaigns where we've crowdsourced products together. So you're looking at comments and YouTube comments and building stuff from the back of that. And then people have ownership of this shower gel that they go nuts about, and they feel that they've invented the next phase of that. So
inviting the consumer in now is a real
absolutely
real part of the process.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that's not dangerous? I
think no, not at all. I think that there's no more minority groups on the internet anymore because everyone's completely in their own gang. So it's not dangerous in the slightest.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you. Okay, any questions on emotions of the pack? Yes, we've got one down the front.
Just interested in what the panel thinks. It tells us that in the retail space, for example, we have Waitrose that people profess to love, and its market share has just been overhauled by Aldi, who no one in their right mind could love, but is highly functionally efficient. Some of the same people shop in both. How do we unpick a situation where that sort of behaviour is happening?
Anyone want to tackle that?
I think both come from the brands knowing exactly their place and their brand story that they're telling. The Aldi have done as have Lidl, a fantastic job of telling that story in the exact emotional space, whether it's the wine or the dry goods. So the brand behaviour from Aldi is bang on in exactly the same way as Waitrose is. So.
Thanks. I was just going to build on it and say, I think it will come down to loyalty. So I think the emotional relevance inspires loyalty. So I think customers will stay with Waitrose for the long term, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with Aldi and other competitors coming into that space.
Sorry, I thought I'd better get involved since it's about food. I think it does come down to loyalty, but it also comes down to price. And if you can look at all of the retailers, it is about price. But then around kind of behaviour is that if you can go to Lidl and you can buy a whole bunch of stuff cheaply, it allows you to be loyal to the brand that you really love, which might be Waitrose. And a lot of people that I know, it's kind of their dirty secret that they go to somewhere like Lidl or Aldi, but that they will traditionally shop at Waitrose, or they'll have it delivered at home by Ocado. It's the same principle for fashion, is that people will shop at Primark because it allows them to spend more money elsewhere, designer brands maybe.
So to some extent, maybe what we're saying is that Aldi have saved Waitrose. Well, I guess it's a bit like that, but I think whether the classic grids for plotting where brands sit, whether we're going to end up with different structures for types of brands. One that does the very functional thing now, which a lot of the digital revolution has given us. But Aldi's not really a digital brand, but it's just done something very simple, very, very well, and that's often how brands start in the very first place. So I think that's testament to the fact that you can still do it even the old-fashioned way to some extent with bricks and mortar. So the good news is a good brand will always win through. Whatever it does, a bad brand will eventually get shot down. I think the thing is, where we are today, it's easier to shoot them down. And I think that's why it's such an exciting time in terms of product, service, and brand renewal and rebirth and death as well, because I think they're exposed and every minority gets a voice. And one of the reasons we're scrambling around to understand, I think, the human interaction with these brands is to so that we can plot a course that we still got a job next week. It used to be 40 years, so I don't think we have time for that sometimes. So I think how we manage brands going forward is going to be really, really interesting. Because I think some will bin. We'll just go, that's it, 5 years, done, finished, here's another one. I think there'll be a much more throwaway as we work and get that feedback loop with the consumers going through. Are there any brands that are in trouble that you know of?
It's really interesting. We partner with the Press Association for the general election, and we're able to measure over 20 different emotions. One of the key emotions in politics is trust. And when you look at the activation of emotion to get the trust, it's acceptance, trust, and then admiration. And when we looked at the politicians from the leaders' debate right up to last Sunday, it was actually the 3 women leaders that had the highest levels of trust. But actually the levels of trust themselves were quite small. You know, we're talking 17%. And it's interesting, you know, how you use data to really understand what is going on. So Boris Johnston joined Twitter from City of Lord Mayor last week, and he got 60,000 followers within a week. And you would say, okay, that metric is going up. But actually, when we looked at his trust compared to the other politicians, it was one of the lowest. With Ed Balls and some of the others. So, I mean, some of the things are truisms, but I think studying emotion, understanding emotion can tell you something you don't know, but actually, and start to challenge your assumptions, which is great.
Yeah, fantastic. No, we're done. One more question. Anyone? Any last question before we let you out? Done? Okay. Join me in thanking the panel.